I'd like to give a warm welcome to Professor Bernie Jaworski.
Thank you. We're going to be talking about organic growth. Does anybody here have a challenge these days on driving organic growth? I guess we do. That's why we're all kind of here, right? Now, as you think about your growth challenge, the issue I'm going to talk about today is around existing products and existing markets. So this is not about, boy, you got to radically innovate your way to get out of this. It's not about you got to take your products and move to emerging markets. It's how do you drive growth of existing products and existing markets, right? So we have a bunch of products that are existing, and we have a bunch of markets that exist. So hopefully this issue will be very salient as we walk through our conversation today. So with that, what I'd like to do is open up with a situation that we had at Monitor Group. This situation is one that is very kind of clearly illustrates the 5 principles that I'm going to get into. So one story, a couple slides, and you're going to say, I get it. I don't really need to hear the rest of his 30-minute talk. But I'm talking about a specific case we did on teenage girls' cosmetics. Teenage girls are on the on-ramp to the consumption of lots of cosmetics, apparently. So this is now for teen girls that are roughly, this is almost like 12, 13, 14, 15. So this is not the 19-year-olds, okay? This is the focus of the market. The question at the time were the executives in the room, very, very smart people, were asking themselves, what specific marketing communication vehicles should I use to target these young teen girls? Now, I know many of you, as I say this, you say, this is not rocket science. I actually know the answer to this one. It's going to be very obvious, Bernie, what I think the answer might be here. So before I show you what I think the answer could be, I'm curious. Many of us probably have or have had 12, 13, or 14-year-old girls. God bless you. I mean, it's a challenging time of life, I think, for these girls. But when we think of the question of what marketing tactics, what specific choice of marketing communication vehicles would you use to target these young girls? So what's our sense? This, by the way, is the participation section of the class. I'm curious what we have as answers. Yes? Peers. So you're going to work through their peers. They're a tightly connected kind of group. I'm going to work with other girls and figure out a way to kind of make it all work. Yes? Cheryl?
Oh, I was going to say social media.
Social media. How many people here think the answer is social media? We have, oh, you guys are just not voting aggressively enough. We have 37% of the people that believe it's social media. My gut is they're lying. Does anybody here want to play? Because I would have expected maybe 90%, but that's okay. 37%, we'll take that number. What other choices? Could you imagine these executives in the room saying, social media? These girls kind of walk around, they're playing with their stuff all the time. That's the answer, it's social media. We've got to kind of get on Facebook, we've got to play this card out. What else, Gene? So role models, singers, celebrities. Somebody like Lindsay Lohan, who recently was had a set of issues. We're going to role model with Lindsay and Britney and all the other. But actually, this is probably too old, right? It's probably more like Miley, maybe. Miley, who's a little more clean-cut, all else equal. You know, maybe that's what we're going to do, is we're going to kind of go with celebrities, and that's going to be the vehicle to kind of get us to where we're going to go. What do we think? Is that what you think? Yeah. Yeah. Sampling. That's interesting. Oh, good. Sampling. Okay, good. Okay. Sarah, you were just channeling. You heard right through the.
I was going to ask you what year this was before we.
This is a few years ago. So it's not this year, but just a few years ago. So social media was, very much in play, right?
So mobile wasn't in play yet.
Mobile was not in play yet, right? That's a good question. Other thoughts? Any other options that we have here? We have celebrity. I'm going to call it the celebrity all-in sort of play. And we've got social media as another play. Other thoughts? Yes?
Teen magazines.
Teen magazines. I love that. Thank you. So teen magazines might be another choice we might play with, okay? All right, so let's kind of see how this plays out here. What we see here is, in this particular case, we see 76% of the time, when they do not actually, move over to the left side. 12% of the time when they're browsing shelves and they don't buy, and they're 12% of the time they are in a situation where they have not sampled our product. They've shopped but not sampled it. 76% of the time, when they sample our brand, they buy our brand. What do you take away from that? What's your takeaway? So it's okay. By the way, these teen girls buy. I forgot to mention, buy at CVS, Rite Aid, and so forth. So they're not shopping at. Some might shop at Sephora if they live in Beverly Hills, but in the general sort of mass public, they're more likely to be buying Rite Aid, sort of CVS. So what you're saying here is, gee whiz, sampling might be pretty important for us, right? Pause for a second. What else are you taking away from this? Because there's actually, this particular slide sets up my 5 principles of driving organic growth. So I'm curious, if you look at this and sort of reflect for a minute, what's your takeaway from this insight? Products that are fitting particular targets. Okay, so you're going to customize your product, kind of meet the needs of a particular segment that's out there. Highly customize that segment. What else is our takeaway? Price points need to be in the right price point for these teen girls. Turns out that teen girls on average are spending $11 when they're actually buying these particular products. Turns out mom turns out to be very important. You might be wondering, gee, mom, why would mom turn out to be very important? Mom has something called cash. That's why mom is very important to bring along to kind of help you think through this issue. What other takeaways? Now, you're the person who's trying to now design and think about the principles of organic growth now. What other things might you take away from this experience in terms of thinking about what you might be learning from this particular observation?
Well, you need to ask the question, why do they sample?
If you're designing this particular product and you're kind of going to market now, what are you going to do? If you're now in charge of teen cosmetics for this particular company, what are you going to do now?
I'm going to package free samples with all the others.
You're going to have the best point of purchase displays in the industry. And it may be a loss leader, but basically, when people walk to CVS, you're going to want those teen girls to go to that particular point and say, I've got mirrors, I've got sampling, I've got different types of colors, it's interesting, it's fun. Maybe I'm actually going to go there with my friends to sort of experience it, right? So you've actually now, what's the industry conventional wisdom? What's the industry conventional wisdom here? So in other words, where is everybody else going? What is everybody, given our conversation we had 7 or 8 minutes ago, what is everybody else doing in the industry? Okay, all right. So everybody else is doing social media. Everybody else is doing advertising, right? That's interesting, right? Because, and this is the big insight, strongly held conventional views of how to do this, these guys were actually counter to the strongly held conventional view of the industry, right? They were challenging the fundamental view. But they did so with data. This is the big insight. They did so with data. They had information about what was going on in the marketplace that other people don't have, right? No other competitor had this type of information, right? We had a window of opportunity to exploit this information, right? So you have to have asymmetric information, right? You have to have information about what's going on in the marketplace that other people don't have, right? This is the issue. Second thing is we need to focus on 1 or 2 behaviors that change. What are we going to focus on for teen girls now? We're going to want them to sample our product at the point of purchase display, right? The issue here is how do we think about driving this particular growth by getting the girls to sample our product? That's the marketing strategy, right? What are other people doing? They've got social media and they've got advertising. They're driving people to the store, but we're trying to catch them at the store, at the point of purchase display, if our brand is strong enough, right? What about segmentation? How do you guys typically think about segmentation in particular markets? Let me ask the question differently. Are you segmenting the market the same way your competition is segmenting the market? In markets that you're competing in right now, are you segmenting your markets very similar to how competition is segmenting markets? Yes. Okay. The point I want to make here is segmentation is a source of competitive advantage. The most important thing you do from a marketing strategy perspective is to begin to segment the markets differently. If you're defining markets the same way as competition, you've given up a source of competitive advantage. You need to start looking at your markets differently than competition. Not different for the sake of being different, but different because you have unique insights about what's unfolding that allow you then to categorize and segment the market. Where is the marketing spend going to go for this particular company that's selling these teen cosmetics? Point of purchase display. And indeed, they took all of the money away from celebrity endorsements. They took a large portion of the money away from social media. They took all the money away from the conventional industry vehicles that everybody was using, and they put them against the best point-of-purchase displays in the industry. Right? They were very choiceful. They were very thoughtful about making choices. They went after segment 1, not segment 2. They bet on this particular behavior to change, not another behavior to change. It's almost like playing the game Risk as a kid. You put all of your chips, typically in Australia. You wanted to conquer the world. You didn't spread your chips everywhere, right? You were very choiceful about where you allocated your particular marketing muscle, your power, your resources, right? Pause for a moment. The critical issue here is it's about being very thoughtful about where we're going to allocate the spend and then betting very heavily on that particular spend. You've got knowledge about the marketplace that other people don't have, and you're exploiting it. My point of view here is that you only end up with differentiated products and differentiated markets when you have differentiated information. Too often, we're trying to differentiate our products in the marketplace without unique customer information to exploit in the marketplace. We oftentimes collect secondary data. I mean, as we think about each of these principles, I'm going to go through them each in a little bit more detail, but the basic idea is principle 1 is about asymmetric information. We have information that other people don't have, that we can then leverage and exploit in the marketplace very quickly. Too often, my clients collect the same data, same type of market research, same focus group, same survey, same questions that everybody else asks. So the question is, where are you getting this asymmetric information? If you're asking the exact same questions that everybody else is asking, right? You got to ask different questions or do different types of techniques. In this case, we actually did ethnographic work. We basically looked and watched teenage girls consume products at the point of purchase display, and we were able to tease out this data, right? I'm not saying that's the only vehicle to use, but what I'm saying is that you've got to start thinking differently about what information do you need to exploit in the marketplace. Question: why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to get this asymmetric customer information? What's your intuition here? Yeah.
You're not really looking for it in the sense that if you're the market, you're doing what everybody else is doing, for example. So you're looking for what everybody else is doing, so you're not looking for that particular.
Yeah, you have almost these blinders on in terms of what you think the industry wisdom is, what everybody in the room is thinking about what's unfolding in the marketplace, right? Do other people similar issue in terms of kind of thinking about this? What's getting in the way? If you honestly believe a customer-focused company is the ability to collect unique data on customers and exploit that, why isn't a lot of resources going after collecting different data about consumption? Why is that?
The incentives are also based on benchmarking, so you have kind of you benchmark one.
Love this. So the incentive system is structured around benchmarking. Benchmarking is about doing the same activities as your competition, right? And what I'm saying here is you have to do different activities, right? In fact, benchmarking, in my judgment, is a very bad activity to engage in because you're not doing different activities, right? It's about kind of coming up with a different way to compete in the marketplace. What else? What else is getting in our way? Yeah.
I think the hardest part of it is understanding what's important to look at. If you're looking at it even from an internal standpoint, you've got IT giving you a data piece. I can go to Google Analytics and get 1,000 different stats.
Yeah.
And then on the marketing side, you've got, woohoo, we got 1 million fans. And what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
So the understanding of what is it that I'm really looking at and how does that help me?
Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, so here's a situation that unfolded with a particular client. This is Cisco. Cisco, anybody here in the IP telephony sort of marketplace? Anybody, Avaya folks here, or Nortel or others? Nortel's not around much anymore, but no. Wow, I can speak with authority about this topic then. Good, because nobody here knows anything. That's good. Oh, wait, we have somebody over. Okay. Cisco at the time was number 2 in the marketplace. Avaya was number 1 in the marketplace. What Cisco was doing was betting very, very heavily on the chief technology officer. They said the chief technology officer is the decision-making body around technology decisions. This is, again, putting in place soft phones, so IP telephony, VoIP, right? So Avaya, Cisco are the 2 major players. So they're basically betting on getting the chief technology officer to make a brand choice decision between Avaya and Cisco. These are the 2 major players in the marketplace, right? Question becomes, gee whiz, what if we look at the entire end-to-end buying process? So from early stage awareness all the way down through consumption of the product. It turns out early stage in the process, the CFO was a critical decision maker because the CFO controlled something called money, right? So the CFO, you had to make the business case for ripping out all of your phones and dropping in a Cisco product or an Avaya product. It's a very expensive proposition. And for someone like a Goldman Sachs who's making this choice, guess what? If the phone doesn't work, not good, right? You know, if you're trying to make these quick transactions and make things happen, right? So you need these phones to be 100% reliable. So there's all this anxiety around this. You needed to make the business case to the CFO. Everybody in the industry believed the answer was the CTO is controlling the brand choice decision, right? And that's true. The CTO was controlling the brand choice decision. But the reality was, much earlier in the buying process, the CFO was dictating the flow of whether that case was even going to be made or not made. So what Cisco did is they were spending 90–95% of their budget on the CTO. They flipped it around. You can kind of see here they had 80% of the budget shift over to the CFO and to try and sell into the CFO the business case for change. Within 12 months, they moved from number 2 in the marketplace to number 1 as a result of this basic decision. Now, they had to reorient the sales force and kind of do a bunch of other stuff. By the way, I forgot to tell you, the Teenage Girls Cosmetics, that was worth $150 million in 1 year to that particular company to basically allocate everything to the point-of-purchase display and have the best in the industry. They became one of the top 5 coolest brands for teens, and they had sort of a lot of momentum in the marketplace. And at the time, they had very level sales around their particular product. So sales had leveled off. It wasn't a hip, cool brand. And that particular choice not only had a revenue effect, but it also had a significant sort of branding effect. In Cisco's case, this knowledge about moving earlier in the buying process, because if you're fighting it out on brand choice, that's a very difficult game. If you're fighting it out on brand choice, you're almost like a commodity product, right? You're selling against them. You're selling, you know, Wells Fargo wealth management services against other wealth management. You know, they're all kind of selling. The question becomes, the insight becomes, are there earlier stages in the buying process, like the Cisco example, where I can intervene to affect, in a sense, the pachinko diagram or the flow through? Because if I can own the CFO in the Cisco case, now I can have a significant impact on the nature of changing the rules of the game around how people are buying product in this particular market. Make sense? Okay. Focus on 1 to 2 behaviors of change. The basic problem here is great companies typically understand a particular behavior to change in the marketplace, and I'm using that very explicit term. They don't focus on attitudes, they don't focus on motivation, they don't focus on other stuff. They focus on a specific behavior to change, and they allocate all of their spend to that particular behavior to change. In this particular case, for teen cosmetics, it was about making sure the teen girls were actually sampling our product at the point-of-purchase display. The entire marketing program was built around that one behavior, okay? So the question, most marketing programs are affecting attitudes, they're affecting motivation, they're affecting belief systems, they're affecting values. What we're saying here is all that's important related to that particular behavior, but focus on the particular behavior to change, okay? Now, do we do that? As a general rule, if you think about our marketing plans, we're being critical, do we focus on the behavior? You might. I mean, you might. I don't want to, I mean, you know, I don't want Patrick this to be a kind of, you know, death march session here. You know, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. Not good, not good. Okay, so in this particular situation, this drug manufacturer was selling glaucoma drugs into the marketplace. Actually, it's disguised, but let's say it's glaucoma for the sake of argument. the data works out this way. If you ask for if the particular physician did a subjective disease evaluation around glaucoma, we ended up getting, you can see at-risk patients down below, at 4% we had our prescription filled for at-risk patients. For not at-risk patients, it was 10%. But if an objective test was performed, an objective test for glaucoma was performed in the marketplace, all of a sudden, what happened is our product ended up moving from 4% to 21% for at-risk, and from 10% to 38% for those that actually have the disease. So it ended up being 4 to 5 times more likely to get drug A, our drug, regardless of the severity of the diagnosis. This was not selling the drug to more of this drug and of detailing more of this drug to the physician. That's not what the story was here. The story was if there is an objective test done around this drug, we end up selling 4 to 5 times the amount of drug we had in the marketplace. What happened for this particular woman that was running this is that she decreased her marketing spend by $50 million. She increased her sales by $350 million in 1 year, based upon this data. Because what they did, you can see where this all goes. It's very obvious. Get the patients to ask for a test. So you had to narrow down what specific patient segment do we go after to ask for this test. Turned out to be highly educated women are the ones that we really wanted to kind of leverage in the marketplace in the beginning. Get physicians to actually order the objective test, right? Get the objective test. And finally, convince physicians that drug A is the best treatment choice versus drug B or C. But what I'm getting at here is it's almost like it doesn't really matter, because if I can get the objective test, I end up winning in the marketplace. Okay? Again, what are we getting at here? It's the same basic principles. They have data that other players don't have. I'm building my marketing plan around 1 or 2 behaviors to change. It's very focused. In the case of teen girls, we knew what it was, right? In the case of Cisco, it was getting the CFO to understand the mathematics of the business case. That was the issue. If I can get the CFO to understand the mathematics and the economics of the business case, I win. And here, it's about the objective test. What is the metric I'm going to use to evaluate? What does that drug company want to track when they build out their marketing metrics? What do they want to look at? What's the particular thing they're going to be tracking over time? Number of objective tests. It's very clear what the metric is, right? A certain amount of spend against number of objective tests. You can run the numbers around what is the return on investment of the marketing spend. It's very simple, right? Make sense? Okay. We talked earlier about segmentation. When we think about the breakthroughs around different examples of firms that compete in the marketplace, those that actually identify a segment that is actually very low value by everybody, but actually target and aggressively go after it, or someone who challenges the conventional wisdom to actually slice and dice their market differently because they know something about the market, they know something about the behaviors of customers in the market, are typically the ones that win very, very big. Can you think of an example of a situation like this? Apple, iPhone, how are they, what's their segment? Is their segment different than BlackBerry or different than Nokia or different than Android? Or so early adopters might be one way they're thinking about that?
Anybody that listens to music, anybody that watches, anyone that plays a game.
Oh, so you're saying, in fact, you're saying there is no segmentation scheme.
Well, using a device in a different way.
Okay.
That would be the difference.
Okay, all right. So we're struggling. This is interesting, right? Because if you really know your segment, right, everybody should know who your segment is, right? And the fact that Apple doesn't have a clearly defined sort of segment is actually interesting, an interesting kind of conversation point. But let's take a look at a couple examples. Walmart. What was Walmart's story back in the 70s and 80s? What did they do? How did Walmart build their machine? Okay, what market did they go after? Rural, right? We all know they went after rural America. Why? Because Sears looked at them and said, that's the dumbest thing I ever saw in my life. Dumbest thing to do, right? But then they got their operations all aligned around figuring out how to serve this difficult-to-serve segment, right? Difficult-to-serve, unexpected segment. What did Southwest do with respect to segmentation? What was it? Yeah, point to point, okay. Who were they defining them? At the time, it was business leisure. That was basically the definition of the segmentation at the time. How did they think of it? Business and leisure was the conventional industry wisdom about how to think about segmentation for air travel. Does anybody recall how Southwest defined their market segment? Short-haul travel. They didn't care if you were business or leisure. It didn't matter. What you were concerned about was point-to-point, short-haul travel. Dell. What was Dell's big insight? Built to order, right? IKEA's, you're willing to kind of carry the stuff out of the store. These are all systems built around a particular segment. TI calculators. Anybody here have kids that are in high school that use TI calculators? Everybody does, because TI has 98% of the market share, right? Now, of course, they don't tell you that, because then there's all kinds of antitrust stuff. So let's just say it's 80 or 85, something like this, okay? Make up a number, but not that big. Richard Char, when he took over the business back in the early 80s, the CEO at the time said, hey, Richard, don't screw up. They had market share of less than 1%. He said, whatever you do, just don't screw it up. He figured, just send them off to the corner, get some revenue, but just don't get in the way of TI, because we got a machine in place, big brand. We don't want you to screw anything up. Very inspirational communication for Richard as he went off to run the company. So what did Richard do? Richard basically threw a hat in the air and said, hey, we got a bunch of teachers on staff here. Let's go learn about the teacher segment. Let's go bet on secondary education. And so they showed up at conferences. They learned a lot about the market. They became deeply entrenched in education. They bet everything on this one segment. Was it the right choice? Who the heck knows, right? Could another choice work better? But what they then did is they built their entire system, their entire set of deliveries, their entire calculator market. Everything they did was to build and address that particular segment. Now it's an incredibly profitable business for TI. I can't say exactly what the numbers are, but let's put it this way. Richard's doing okay. He's doing fine at this point. But number one market share business, the dominant business, enormous cash flow from this particular business. When they go to conferences now and they announce a button has been modified to move from here over to here on the calculator, standing ovation breaks out. It's like, whoa, can't believe it. You finally got the sine cosine feature to move over to there. That's what we were all asking for, But they're like, they're rock stars in this industry, right? They've had over 90% market share for about 10 years, right? From 1% market share. Why? Because they bet on a segment and they built their entire system on this segment. In contrast, Texas Instruments' DSP business, for those who follow any of the DSP technology, back when they were innovating here, they had 10 different segments they were going after. And they spent equal amount of money on each of those 10 segments. 10 years later, someone says, well, let's probably allocate more money to the video segment, the audio segment. And that's kind of what they ultimately did. But for 10 years, could that technology work in each of those 10 segments? Absolutely. But the problem was they didn't bet enough money. They were all feeling like they were making progress, but they didn't bet enough in that particular one segment of the marketplace. So defining markets differently. One way I know a company doesn't know what they're doing is they spend what I call, they allocate their marketing spend in what I call peanut butter marketing approach. We're going to spend some money on advertising. We're going to spend some money on sales collateral. We're going to spend some money on trade shows. We're going to spend some money over here on the sales support activities. We're going to spend some money over here on some trade journals. We're going to spend some money on advertising. Why? Don't know. That's what we've been doing for the last few years. And if we get a little bit more money, we'll add another 1% here. And we'll add, why? Because they have no idea what's going on. But in the case of the other option of peanut butter marketing is to spend all the money on one particular behavior to change. This goes back to our stories, right? One behavior to change. The way you know you've got a really good marketing plan is you're not spending it across 15 marketing vehicles. You're spending it on one or two. In the case of teen cosmetics, it was all about point-of-purchase display. Take all the money away from the other parts and put it at point-of-purchase display, right? That's an interesting marketing plan. Yes? You look at the buying process. You look at the buying process in a lot of detail, and you find out where are people falling out. And what we found in the case of Cisco is they fell out very early. The CFO and the CTO was making a technical decision. CFO, very early on, was making the business case. Teen Cosmetics, we ended up following them from early awareness, sharing information, everything else. We had a lot of data on them. But the point-of-purchase display became the interesting sort of vehicle. But we always use the buying process and try and figure out where are they falling out. And then wherever they're falling out, where we can have leverage, where we can change that behavior to not just affect the marketplace, but to actually affect our growth, that's where we spend. Okay, disproportionate spend. The basic story here is that this particular medical device manufacturer wanted to build market share in home markets. One of the big issues unfolding in healthcare now is home delivery, home market, home healthcare. But they had all of their spend allocated to going through healthcare facilities, because typically the way in which you got medical devices into your home was to work through other providers, other channels. The big insight here was, for these guys, was that choice of how to get your home health delivery was not based upon the home health care facilities. The actual physicians and nurses had a very significant impact. So the spend moved away from healthcare facilities over to physicians and to nurses that actually shaped that choice of where you wanted care delivered. Okay? So again, the issue here was disproportionate spend against particular vehicles. The most important word that you can hear, if you leave today, you're probably going to remember stories of teen cosmetics. That's what you'll remember. But I want to introduce a new word into the vocabulary, which is choicefulness. The best thing you can do with marketing strategy is to say what we're not going to do. So let's say we have 7 or 8 segments in the marketplace. It'd be great to say we're going to spend all of our money against segments 1 and 2. And we're going to take all the money away from 4 and 5. That makes people very anxious. But if you have the data to support that, that's an interesting decision. But normally what happens is people love to position on 5 or 6 key benefits. They love to use lots of marketing vehicles. They love to focus on many different segments, many different markets, many different products. And what I'm saying here is focused spend, focused allocation is the big kind of takeaway here. So you want to move away from looking at your overall marketing program in terms of sort of a broad display of activities to a very focused allocation around the particular emotion and functional benefit you want to own, a very clear behavioral objective for the particular segment that you're sort of targeting in the marketplace, targeted value propositions around terms that they care about, given the data that we have, and then finally, staged activation. So I want to leave this slide with you, and what I want to leave with you is several kind of key points here. Obviously, teen cosmetics is the one that you're going to leave with, but hold on to that, and kind of hopefully you're going to go a little bit higher order. The only way you're going to get differentiated products is through unique, different information on customer behavior. Everybody wants differentiated products. Everybody does it by asking the same questions on the survey, the same focus groups, everything else. You've got to get at different information. The insight here is use the buying process in excruciating detail to find out where people are falling out of the process. And ask yourself, can I leverage that fallout point? Second thing is, too often we're focused on brand choice. If you're fighting it out on brand choice, you tend to have commodity-type products. It tends to be a very difficult game to differentiate. You want to fight it out earlier in the buying process, around product category choice, around other stuff that you're dealing with. If you can fight it out earlier in the buying process, the higher up in the buying process you go, the better off that you are. If you're defining markets the same way competition does, big problem. The biggest insight, the biggest areas for growth is around segmentation. The ability to see markets, define them differently, and then allocate the spend against it. That's the big insight. So too often, for every technology company I work with, they all define markets by what they call vertical segments. We have automotive, we have government, blah, blah. And if they get really fancy, they say we have large accounts, medium accounts, and small accounts, right? Whoa, phew, that's really bright, really helpful. And my joke whenever I go to technology companies, I kind of tell this story, and I usually tell it in a lot more detail. And I say, can you imagine the other firms do that? And they look around the table and say, well, that's what we're doing. And we're doing the same thing. Bad, very bad to do, right? Because there's enormous heterogeneity in these vertical segments, right? They all buy differently. I say, do they buy differently? Then why are you calling them a segment if they're buying differently? They have different criteria, right? And then finally, focus spend. You want to move away. Another term you've learned today is peanut butter marketing. Peanut butter marketing is not good, right? Think of the game of Risk. You want to basically spend all of your marketing spend at a very point in the buying process where you can get leverage and allocate the spend to change that particular behavior. Okay? So those are the basic 5 principles. That's kind of the way to think about marketing. I think it's a different way than we've historically thought about marketing, so that's kind of the big takeaway from all of this, is that it's about behavior and changing 1 or 2 behaviors because you've got this sort of unique information. Okay? So I know we have 7 minutes left for extensive Q&A.
Professor, your first question.
These better be softball questions. Just warn them that they're actually taking my classes sometime soon. So with that in mind, ask me a tough question.
Okay, so hello everyone, and that's a difficult position to be in, but okay, so my question will be, as we are students and we are entering into the marketing industry.
Yep.
We know this thing as we will learn it from you, but how to pitch this to a CEO or somebody who is expert in marketing and have a lot of experience but not doing this?
Yeah. I think the answer for the CEO is one thing the CEO has to own is the growth agenda for the firm. The CEO has to have a very specific story around where they're going to drive growth, point one. Most CEOs today that are in the United States believe the answer to their growth story is outside the market. That is, it's about emerging, for many, I'm not sure about all of you, but large companies, everybody believes the story is emerging markets. So they're allocating all their spend to these emerging markets. My story to the CEO would be to say, well, everybody's allocating their spend to these emerging markets, double down on North America. So in other words, existing products and existing markets, because guess what? We have revenue, we have systems, we have distribution systems, we have Salesforce. It's an interesting thing. Whenever the pendulum swings the other way, I love to swing it back this way, because that's the opportunity, because everybody's taking their eye off the ball right now. And that's why I think sales, to a large degree, is sort of leveled off. It's a little bit of self-fulfilling prophecy, I think, to some degree. So my argument would be the CEO has to drive the growth agenda. The CEO typically doesn't think this level of detail around market plans, but I think the basic theory of the case was one that would resonate, the basic principles. Good question, by the way. You now take the class.
Okay,
Excellent.
we have a question. We have a question over here. To
Yes.
your left, Bernie. Over here.
Oh, yes.
Hello. My question is this. A lot of the examples were great that you shared, calculator, cosmetics, and pharmaceuticals. And those are all tangible. What about intangible services? Because those were products.
So where's Steve? So I just finished teaching a class called Managing Professional Services Firms, which there's a lot there, right, in terms of but the same basic issues apply. When I was at Monitor Group, we would apply this buying process methodology to our own work, because the issue is, where are we losing business in terms of, are people aware of our company? Are they aware, but they're not really getting information? They're getting information, but they're not actually, they're using some other type of product category to consume. They're doing it themselves versus using us or going to some other third party. So the same basic ideas apply to professional services firms. So I ended up I was biased towards tangible products, but the basic theory of the case works exceptionally well for professional services companies. Yes?
In the Cisco idea, I would imagine the vision and the market identification would have to precede the decision to relinquish everything else to the CTO and to the CFO. Because Dell's decision, I think, was to address the market was already identified. There is the personal delivery and no Best Buy
built to order, because built to order kind of.
Yeah. With the marketing, the CMO, the new term, the marketing executives and the CEO executives would have had to have done that job of the vision and the marketing specificity, and the CTO and the marketing were really, the CTO and the CFO were really in the process of actually managing and executing the strategy. Would you think, or I missed it?
No, the basic story is that, so the story is Cisco sells in at this time of the case to a Bank of America. That's the basic idea. Who do we talk to at Bank of America? They would talk to the chief technology folks, right? But at the time, this was an early adoption technology. So they had to overcome a brand new technology that didn't exist in the marketplace, voice over internet protocol, right? So they had to kind of get this to adoption. But they thought the issue ultimately was going to be a technology decision, right? But if you think about the early adoption cycle and the risk factors, the idea that the CFO or the CEO would actually be involved, particularly for large financial institutions, which is one of their early target segments they were going after, you would think, you'd say to me, geez, Bernie, how could they not know it? How could they not know it? This team that I was working with had 15 people globally, deeply involved in the marketplace, each with about 15 years of experience. So you had 225 years of experience in the room. They didn't think this way. They still thought the answer was Chief Technology Officer. Only when we got the data, we sent each member of the team to go talk to 10 customers. They came back with 150 data points. And we learned by mapping the buying process that we were losing everybody much earlier in the process. So we ended up getting the customer data. We ended up finding out where we were losing them. And it was much earlier. And we didn't understand the significant role that the business folks played in that situation. So you had people with deep expertise. This is the amazing thing. Deep, deep knowledge about what's going on in the market. But still, they didn't see this. Now when I tell the story, it seems probably obvious to everybody. But at the time, that wasn't the case. This was probably 2004 maybe or something.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Okay, quick question. Would you use personas in the strategy forming process at all?
I'm sorry?
A persona. where you basically create a typical customer for this segment, and that way you can base your marketing decisions around that.
Yeah. So the question is, would I develop a persona? I would. I would develop a narrative, a story of who the target customer is. But what I want in that story is I want it to be behavior-based. You know, I do want to have the motivations and attitudes and reasons why they buy. Sure, I want to have that. But I also want to know what is the behavior that's operating in the marketplace that I want to change. So I want to have the story built around the behavior, the narrative of who that target customer is. By the way, that's actually a very good thing to do because normally we don't have a narrative that is a little story, a multi-paragraph story of who our target customer is. That story brings to life in an emotional way who that target customer is, right? So it's a good idea to actually put a narrative rather than say 47 years old, you know, lives here, da da, and it's like there's no story there, right? You want to create the story that creates the bonding and it gets the organization aligned around who that target segment is.
So I'm going to take you away from peanut
butter marketing? We're moving away from Skippy and Jiffy into some other category.
And
organic, Whole Foods peanut butter marketing. Yes.
Away from widgets and all that,
Okay.
into the complex world of online services.
Yes.
So when I look at a company like Facebook, I'm like, who are their customers? And I'm trying to, at a very high level, segment. You have the end users, meaning the 500 plus million that are going. But then you also have the businesses that put ads or the developers that develop games, etc.
Those narratives should be very different. So narrative for segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, segment 4, segment 5. Those stories better have different parts of the stories. Different things are driving their behavior. They have different attitudes. They have different motivations. There's different stuff going on. If all of a sudden they're blending together, that tells me I'm not thought carefully through my segmentation scheme, right? So one way is to use the narratives as a way to figure out, have I really defined my market correctly? Point one. Point two, Cisco said to me, hey, in routers and switches, Bernie, I get your basic gig around here, segmentation, but we actually have 8 segments and we have 80% market share. So I'm going after every segment, right? So what I said to them is, rank order them in terms of profitability and which ones are most important for you. Right? Give me the rank order, because if I have scarce resources, where am I going to spend my money? Right? So even almost in a monopoly situation, I want to know where I'm allocating my spend, and they're allocating my spend to the right segment. So even a rank ordering exercise is sort of worth doing here. The other point, which is a side point, but I'm going to spin it a particular way. One of the interesting things that's happening, I think, as we think about competition and strategy now, is I'm seeing a situation of the GEs of the world and other clients that they're moving away from firm-to-firm competition to networks of players in a marketplace against networks of players. We see that in technology companies when you see them, software developers and other stuff. But even for GE in healthcare in South America, it's about the alliances, the partnerships, the joint ventures. And GE is even moving away from joint ventures where they have at least 50% ownership. They're giving up control because they're trading off against local knowledge in those marketplaces. Because folks in Korea or folks in Brazil or folks in Panama know more about healthcare in their regions than GE might. So they're buying that local knowledge and local knowledge about not just the customer, but about the distribution channels, about the resources, about the human capital and everything else. So I think we're going to see more and more move away from single firm against single firm and asking who's the constellation of players that you kind of get together that are going to go to market. That also creates more competitive advantage. Because if it's a constellation of players, a lot of resources are being marshaled to go after a particular market, more than just your bank of resources.
Thank you so much. Those are some excellent questions. And let's give another applause to Dr. Jaworski.
Thank you.
That was an awesome talk, and I think we can all come away with some insightful tips and strategies on how to go about our marketing in a much more compelling and impactful way.